Now, your stories might be delightful, but I must admit that the most fantastical element, the most unbelievable element, is the idea of believing in faithful love.
Do you really believe that? From what I've heard, I thought you would proclaim love above all things.
Oh, my dear, love is a game to delight the senses, the mind, the body, the spirit can relish in what we can do, and how the pleasures that can be extended from one body to another. But as for believing in love, no, I don't have time to tarry so long for eternal love.
And are there no consequences to this game? Our reputation, as you've already told me, is such a fragile thing.
Yes, but, well, really, so far, no one has had any cause of complaint. The trick is to be discreet. I've had no scandals on that side. The only scandal I've had has actually been of the mind. You remember Marie Catherine?
Oh, I remember it so well. My goodness. Madame de Maintenon was most displeased with your little story. You thought you could cloak it, didn't you? Under the guise of a story, but she found you out.
Oh, dear, well, Madame de Maintenon, the king's mistress, as you might say. This is why we call her Madame of the Moment. And yet her moment has lasted so long. And yes, she did seem to recognize herself, didn't she? And she would have her vengeance on me, but this is a game, just part of the jokes that we have, the little witticisms that we might enjoy. But I think the greater pleasure is in playing with all that we could delight in, as long as one has no consequences, as you might say. In fact, I've written of such a thing. Well, not quite. You might recognize some elements, the ways that we give birth one to another of our stories. In my own story of the Turbot, are you interested in hearing?
I'd love to, yes.
The Turbot. Turbotine was a queen, and so she was powerful. Turbotine was a fairy, and so she was very powerful. Turbotine was in love with Cocorico, and so she gave all the power over her happiness and heart into his care. And when she found him in the arms of another woman, it was as if the waves that broke upon their island home smashed against her soul, breaking it. She would not listen to a word he said, but cursed him. And she rose up, every millimetre a queen. Inconstant as the sea you are, and there you shall remain for always. Cocorico opened his mouth like a fish, like a flatfish, like a turbot, and he sank beneath the waves and swam far away. Alone in her garden, Turbotine wept, and the one who came to comfort her was a butterfly. "It is I, Fortunate, brother of your husband Cocorico. You see how I have been cursed by that old fairy mandarine just because I rejected her advances. She said if I could only love one who was young and lovely, then I was no better than a butterfly, and so I would remain all the daylight hours until I find the one I can love all their life. Oh, Turbotine, mighty fairy, help me. Help me for the sake of the love you bear my brother." And because she did indeed still love him, Turbotine set off across the seas to find the Turbot and to find a way to save his brother Fortunate. She came upon the Turbot just in time, just when he was about to be devoured by the fisherman, Moreau the fool. Just in time to hear the words the Turbot spoke in appeal. "Stop! Spare my life, and I will grant you any wish your heart desires." Any wish? I wish that you make the Princess Rosette pregnant somehow, and all the world will laugh at her the way she laughed at me. And at these words, Turbotine saw in her wisdom a way forward, a way to save the Turbot's life by granting Moreau's wish, and a way of fulfilling Fortunate's destiny and of saving Rosette, though they would all have to suffer much loneliness first. And so the wish of Moreau was granted, a wish born of vengeance, just as the curse of Turbotine was born of vengeance. And the king, Rosette's father, he banished them, banished Rosette and Moreau as well, because he believed, as all the world did, that Moreau was responsible for the pregnancy. And he was right, just not in the way they all supposed. And so they were both placed in a boat, and for 8 long months they sailed across the many seas, until at last Turbotine blew into their sails, and their little boat came ashore on the magical island of Turbotine, just as the moon was rising in the night sky. And as Rosette watched, Moreau set foot on land, but no sooner had his foot touched the earth than he vanished before Rosette's gaze, and in his place, in the moonlight, stood the handsome figure of the Prince Fortunate, and they recognized their love. But it was not love at first sight. Rosette told the fairy Turbotine something she had never revealed to anyone else. 9 months ago I had a dream that I met Fortunate, and when I saw him, I saw the one I was destined to love always, and he said he felt the same. And I dreamt that we were married in a palace just like this, on an island just like this. I had this dream 9 months ago. Turbotine took the hand of Rosette and she looked at Fortunate. The time has come to reveal the truth. That was no dream, but an enchantment that I cast over you both during the night time when Fortunate takes his human form. And I brought you here and had you married, the two of you. And now here you are reunited as true husband and wife. Moreau was never the father of the baby that you carry, Rosette. And now I have sent him far, far away to be with the old fairy mandarin, the one who cursed you, Fortunate. The wishes of both were born out of their bitterness. But now they have each other. When the sun rose over the island the next morning, Rosette gave birth to a baby girl. And when Fortunate, the butterfly, first looked at the face of his baby daughter, he saw the one he would love all her life. And so he was transformed into a man, such a happy man. Ah, Turbotine, in my great happiness, I wish for you to be happy too. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive my brother Cocorico? In truth, I forgave him long ago. But it is not enough for you to forgive him in your heart. You must say the words to lift the curses. For when you cursed the one you loved, you cursed yourself as well. And so Turbotine stood upon a rock and she called out across the oceans, "Turbo, oh Turbo, come to me. If you are a faithful man, be a man once more. If you can speak words of truth, speak now." And at once a turbo leapt from the sea and landed before her, shining silver, looking into her eyes. And the words he spoke were simple and honest. All their suffering had been born of misunderstanding, not from him being faithless, but from her lacking faith. And so they were brought together on their magical island home. Turbotine and Cocorico, Fortunate and Rosette. And their happiness was high as the waves, and their love was deep as the ocean.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Wonderful, charming, so good. I must say it bears a strong resemblance to my story, The Dolphin.
That is not an accident, as you know. In our salons, Charlotte Rose, there is often a sort of game where we play one story against another. I dare say you've noticed that both our stories, both The Dolphin and The Turbo, are both somewhat inspired by the master of all, Straparola.
I did notice that.
But his story, of course, did not care so much about either love or birth. And children are part of it. I mean, as in our salons, Marie Catherine's story of the dolphin is like a mother to my own story, just as she has been a fairy godmother to me, and I hope to you in the future.
Indeed. And speaking of motherhood, how interesting that you do indeed have a pregnancy in your story, but not one that's caused by, well, it appears not to have been caused by actual sex.
Well, I think they have ways of revealing, sharing, giving birth to ideas and to stories. It is certainly a dangerous life for a woman with pregnancy. You know the risks yourself only too well.
It is hard to be pregnant in these days, this time, and being able to have children, and especially if you don't have a partner or you're not married.
Well, yes. I have somehow managed to have another 2 children since then without having an actual husband.
Well, since your husband is concealed at this time, there are other opportunities available to you. And perhaps the support you need is not so much from a man as from other women.
That's true. I would say that my mother is the support that I have had in my life. Although, to be honest, she was the one who forced me into the marriage with Baron d'Ormeaux in the first place. Since then, she has been a wonderful support, caring for her grandchildren and making sure that the Baron was charged with treason of the king. She is a good and decent mother, and I thank her over and over again for her assistance in my life.
Oh, you are so lucky to have your mother there. Mine was taken away by the king and put in a nunnery because the king wanted her lands, because she couldn't be a woman owning property on her own, even though she was very capable of it. So you're very lucky to still have your mother.
So true. How cruel it is for the king to constantly place us in these nunneries as if it were a prison, and purely for the crime of being just a woman. Luckily, thankfully for me, when I was sent to prison for exactly the same crime, at least I was able to write. Writing is what saved me in the nunnery.
Indeed, it's the blessing for us all that as we are the mothers to each other and we create the real fairies. Charlotte Rose, in the salons you will find that we, the writers, are the ones with the power. We are the fairy godmothers and we create the fairy godmothers to live on in our stories. For myself, the only children that I really care about are the ones that I have created with my quill.